All right, and welcome everyone to January 23rd, 2023 GOC meeting, government operations. We're gonna have a short meeting today, but I would like a motion to amend the agenda. What is the right motion? I want to do introductions. Okay. Make a motion to amend the agenda to add introductions as well as setting a permanent time. Can I get a second? Or
Second.
all righty. Motion to amend the agenda to include introduction and setting a time. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
And opposed? Ayes have it. So first we'll approve the November 21st meeting, and thank you staff for providing us our November 21st meeting. Pretty standard. I see no corrections, but can I get someone to motion to approve the November 21st, 2022 meeting?
So move.
Just need a second.
Second.
Motion approved. All righty. Moving on, these two items are not on the agenda, but we got two new awesome commissioners. And they probably don't know staff that well. So if we just go around and just start with Mr. Lundy and just introduce ourselves and our title. Just something fun about you.
Oh, fun. All right. So I'm Bruce Lonnie. I'm the Assistant Planning Director for the Planning Department. We had a brief opportunity to hang out a month or so ago.
It was like
Something fun. We should probably share one of the just that may be. I'll hold that to me. Yeah. Okay. I'm Canadian. I'll just throw that out there. Parents are Canadian, so
that's it.
I can off the top of my head.
All right.
Stephen Bailey, Public Works Director, and happy to be here and talk about alleyways. Really excited. Something exciting about me, I play keyboard in our early service at church, which is the same church that Bruce Lonnie goes to.
And kills it.
What church is that?
House Road Presbyterian.
All right.
Yeah.
So if you want to wake up early and come see me sing and play piano, you're welcome to
8 o'clock service?
9 o'clock service.
9 o'clock.
It's legit.
I'm Cynthia Lambright. I work in the manager's office, and I don't know that there is anything fun about me.
I don't believe that.
I think there's a lot.
Josh Edwards, Assistant Manager. Good to be here. Something new. You know, my wife was at a funeral this weekend up in Massachusetts for 4 days. And so my new is that I survived 4 days with 3 young children and everybody made it through and we had an amazing time. So I'm glad to be here, but I'm tired. So.
At least you weren't part of the future.
That's right. I wasn't.
I'm Ronnie Katrib. I'm the Assistant Director for the Transportation Public Works Department. I love working on cars. That's why I drive older cars.
Wow.
How do you bring up the Canada connection?
I thought he might go there.
I'm Wayne Mead, Athens-Clarke County Superintendent, Streets and Drainage. Something fun. I like riding motorcycles.
Awesome.
Well, I am Tiffany Taylor. I'm newly elected District 3 Commissioner. Something fun about me. I have a lot of things that's fun about me. I just can't pinpoint it right now.
Your kids?
Yeah, so that's what's fun about me. And it makes me so proud that you survived your 3 babies this weekend.
That's right.
Takes a lot. Yep.
That's right.
So that's a fun fact. I'm a mom.
I'm Dexter Fisher, new Commissioner of District 5. My thing, I love golf. I play a lot of golf. Haven't played a lot recently, but I'm gonna start back. But I love to play golf, so that's my deal. So,
All right. Well,
yeah, sure.
Well, that's kind of an attorney.
I'm not from Canada, though my neighbor is. I live in the High Ridge subdivision. as we were discussing the subject of ministry, I've served as a lot of you probably don't know this, but I was a bivocational pastor in United Methodist Church for about 5 years prior to coming to Athens. So that's a little fun fact about me.
Cool.
That's awesome.
You gonna let Commissioner Hammond off the hook?
No, I feel bad now. I think I've said a few cuss words in front of Joe.
Now we know how to act.
I'm going to go to confession. I'm Mike Hamby. Served on this commission for, I guess, 14 years now. I've enjoyed every minute of it, making a good difference with a lot of good people. And I guess the fun thing that a lot of people don't know about me, I may try to get it out there this year, is I do a little bit of painting, abstract paintings. And so I may try to enjoy it. It's relaxing.
Pastor Downford, District 1 Commissioner. I love sleeping. I really do. People think I'm weird, but nope.
You took mine.
So the second thing that's not on our agenda, so we usually meet the third Mondays of the month, but because of MLK, we had to push it back. I propose that we meet the third Monday of every month at 1 o'clock, if that works, or 2 o'clock. That works for everybody.
And we're not going to do this fun thing every meeting, right?
No.
Okay. Just making sure.
I know I used my only one. I know I said it was a lot. It's only one though.
It's 1 o'clock. It's fine by me. I mean,
Yeah,
that works for everybody else.
is it on Wednesdays? I mean, on Tuesdays?
On Monday.
Mondays.
On Monday.
Every third
The
month.
third Monday at
Okay.
1 o'clock. Okay.
Okay.
Motion to, can I want a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
I second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All righty, Mondays. Ayes have it, third Mondays at 1. All righty. Right after lunch, y'all.
No.
So get that itis.
I know that's right.
Get that sleepiness. Okay, on to the topic at hand, and I will turn it over to staff to talk about the topic at hand.
Yeah, sure. So I'll kick it off just to make sure we're on the same page. So today we're starting a new item. So this is the first day. And we're looking at the mayor's charge from February 1st, 2022. And this was to evaluate a process for assumption of maintenance for actively used bike or pedestrian easements on private property or unopened right-of-ways. And so sometimes we call these alleys, but you can see where the mayor is really wanting us to focus. Is really on those that are used by bike or pedestrians. And so today, and as long as we're talking about this, we're going to be joined by TPW, obviously. So we got Ronnie, Wayne, and Stephen here, planning. So Bruce is here from planning, and Judd from the attorney's office. And so these three departments have been talking a lot about alleys, and we're going to share a little bit about context. We're going to ask y'all to help us define what an alley is. We've got a map. We don't think all this is going to last the full hour, but we want to just start the conversation, then have y'all share what you want us to focus on and where you want us to go from here to kind of close it out. So with that, I'll kick it to Bruce and Stephen. Go ahead.
So, there's a lot to talk about when we think about alleys. So I think you're right. Starting, and we passed this note around, starting with a definition of what an alleyway is. It's probably a good start. And then really taking a look at that charge specifically there that says evaluating a process for assumption of maintenance for actively used bike or pedestrian easements on private property or unopened rights of way. And notice that when we show you a map up here, they're going to see things that might not traditionally look like an alley. And those unopened rights of way are locations we'd be looking at as well. When it comes to that charge of identifying what we may want to maintain and what that looks like, we're going to have to narrow that definition because the map and how many points we're starting with may shock you. It's over 800 locations that we're starting with, and we want to narrow that down to something a little bit more manageable. Bruce, I think, wanted to start with the definitions and maybe some about that. Okay, so Sharon. It's not really one about here. Beautiful color coded map. But do you want to start with?
Sure.
Yeah.
So presently, the definition of alley that we have in the zoning code, relates to the platting of new subdivisions and alley access for the homes in those subdivisions to have rear access so they don't have a bunch of driveways on the main street. That definition has only been around since 2001, which only 22 years. But a lot of what you're going to see and what we're going to talk about are opportunities, alley spaces that existed well before 2001. And some of them existed 19th century, honestly. So what we want to be clear about is with the mayor's charge, we're talking about bike and ped access. So we're not talking about vehicles. You know, we're not talking about some of the things that some people think of when they think of alleys, but we wanted to put that to this committee. Is that the focus? Is that where we're going to stay, in that lane of bike ped? Or are we going to open it up a little bit further? So that was a question staff had. The other category that happens after the comma in the charge is unopened rights of way. And so we have easements and we have unopened rights of way. Legally, two different animals. And easements typically exist across private property. So there's a whole different kind of discussion that you would have when you're crossing somebody's private property. But when you have rights of way, we're typically not dealing with somebody's private claim at that point. But a careful distinction, and this is where Attorney Drake's going to help us too, is not all rights of way are Athens-Clarke County rights of way. And that's part of the issue that we have here with what's been mapped. So going to the map, what has been done with TPW staff with GIS data is a really quick look, not at easements, but there are 813 line segments of unnamed rights of way, not necessarily Athens-Clarke County, but unnamed rights of way that touch public right of way. So everything you see on the map in blue or in red is one of these 813 line segments. So this is a really big issue. And the red and the blue, let me explain that. The blue is, well, the red is something that Athens-Clarke County lays some claim to, correct?
To some degree, yes. So there's really two maps superimposed here, and one thing I want to put across to you is that if we want to dive further into this, a lot of this 813 has really no data to it. So these we know that these locations exist, but we don't have anything about ownership or width or type of pavement, that kind of thing. Only about 100 of these have that information on them. So some of the red is a line, and some of the red is more of a polygon, and that's where color coding doesn't help as much. Blue is what we know for sure is a mapped private right of way, or mapped private alley.
And this is raw data. You know, this has not been scrubbed. We have not really proved this very closely. This was for discussion purposes for today. But what we wanted to do, and what we've done in the years past, is when this topic has come up, it's usually been about a particular alley, a particular instance where a property owner who's adjacent has a concern. And then we as staff kind of get together and try to figure out what's going on. And every time we do that, we realize we got a whole bunch of these. This is the first time I've seen that number associated with it. My, what sounds conservative guess, but it seemed crazy at the time, was about 500 of these around the county. So what we tried to do to give you guys something to kick around and maybe start to categorize are groupings of these alley types. And so that's what it's at the bottom of the page of what I handed out. And this is for discussion. This can be amended, expanded, whatever is helpful. But we recognized that we have downtown alleys. Mm-hmm. And over the years, the notion of those downtown alleys has been a topic of discussion for particularly solid waste, as opportunities for shared management of garbage cans or bags, and so that things don't have to go out to the curb. And whenever we've got looking at it, anything in downtown is complicated. Everything in downtown is complicated because everybody has shared claim to this, that, or the other. A lot of these downtown alleys are used for service access. A lot of them are used for infrastructure in some way, shape, or form. It can't be blocked because there's electrical service or there's something else. And there's also kind of muddy title to some of these, to be perfectly honest with you. It's not super clear who owns what and where people's property lines go. So it's not an inexpensive effort to shake that out. And so typically we've dealt with these on a case-by-case basis whenever a developer is trying to do something. Case in point, Georgia Theater, when they had their fire and we worked with them to kind of figure out how to get better access for the future if there was ever another emergency. We worked with them to make improvements in the alley area that's behind it. Knowing full well they didn't have ownership of it, we didn't lay claim to it, but the fire marshal needed that to function a certain way to make Georgia Theater be able to reopen. We didn't take that up as a whole downtown issue. We focused on Georgia Theater. So that's a good example. I have photographs of some of these too if we care to get into it, but we'll go topically through these first. Category 2, unopened, unimproved rights of way. And you'll see with the next 3 categories, I've taken it and snapped them into 2 parts. When we have an unopened, unimproved, meaning it's just trees growing up through there. It exists only on a map. Nobody's ever done anything in there that we have record of to show that it was used for anything, that it's on a map. Sometimes we have stormwater, or we have maybe an old water line, or maybe there's something that's running through there, and on a case-by-case basis, we'll figure that out. But a lot of times with those unopened and unimproved, they only exist on a map, and there is no county infrastructure in there. Next category is where you have some that are partially open, partially improved. Maybe this is a good opportunity for me to zoom in and give you a sense of it. Okay, so 5 Points is a really good example where we can see a bunch of these all in one spot. So if we focus in at the 5 Points intersection right here, an example of an partially improved alley coming off of Morton right behind, what's the restaurant name? That one.
What is
Mexican restaurant.
The Mexican restaurant, yes.
How about going to the one next to Royal Peasant, Bruce, which
Okay.
is the one that started this whole conversation?
So Royal Peasant, okay, so we'll start with there because that's really category 4 in a way, but happy to do that. This area right along Royal Peasant, and I'll turn on the aerial so we can take a look at what's going on. Earth Fair sits right here. So this is a pedestrian area. The condition of that sidewalk is kind of a mixed bag. It's heaved up by tree roots and things, but this has improvements in it. This is
Just on the upper end,
I'm sorry?
just on the end closest to Carlton or to Millage Terrace.
If you there's a sidewalk entrance here, but when you get down to here, you're basically walking through the seating of the Royal Peasant. So
Well,
it's
you're walking
improved.
through that, but if you go up a little bit farther, you're walking through a bunch of cracked asphalt and tree roots that people have tripped over.
Correct. But it's in rough shape. Fair enough.
who that's supposed to belong to? Is that supposed to be?
That's the question.
That's the
That's the
question.
question.
That's the
Okay.
question.
Okay.
It's not a question to me, Dexter. I'm sorry, Commissioner Fisher, but we years ago there was the county released a quit claim saying they didn't own it, I guess. But if you release a quit claim, how can you release a quit claim if you don't own it? And no one around there, everyone around there has said that they don't own it. And they've, agreed to sign an affidavit saying that they don't own it. So this is what started this whole conversation, is because Commissioner Wright and I have been trying to work on getting this fixed since February of last year and before. I mean, this has been a 30-year problem, really, even before either of us got on the commission. And the situation is, this is so heavily traveled by pedestrians, and y'all been there.
Yeah,
I mean,
I'm
it's,
familiar with that. Yeah.
and there are some elderly folks there, and not only elderly, but others that have tripped on the asphalt there. And at some point, it makes you wonder how to. I mean, I kind of feel like we're responsible for it, and because no one around there wants it and has laid claim to it. So this is how this whole conversation started. I don't know about the other 830, but if we're developing a policy just around around one, and it's going to take us a whole year to develop that policy, then I'm going to take a little bit of umbrage with that, because it's not right. I mean, I think, some of these alleyways, the 831 that have been mentioned, the downtown alleyways, the Downtown Development Authority helps with a lot of those. The Downtown Development Authority's paid to clean up a bunch of those. And they've done some improvements along the one near Morton Theater there, with putting hard work along that alleyway there. So they're trying to work with that. So you can take the downtown alleyways off your list because there's somebody handling that, but there's nobody handling this.
So my question would be, though, I'm not disputing what you're saying, but what if they want to expand?
Right.
Either way. So if we claim it and they want to expand, we can deny them the expansion.
Well, I don't know. Yeah.
I'm just saying.
Yeah, we could,
Okay.
but I don't know that any of the businesses along there, I mean, once they sign that piece of paper, the judge suggested we go through the process of having them say they don't own it.
Okay.
Once they sign that, then they give up the rights to do that.
Okay.
And they've all agreed to do that. As a matter of fact, I know some trees are an issue along Earth Fair there that are older trees, and it's my understanding that the owner of the Earth Fair building knows that may be a possibility of those having to be replaced.
Yeah.
So, I'm just looking at the safety aspect, because a lot of people walk this trail, and it's a connection from one point of 5 points to another. And at some point, somebody's going to get seriously hurt.
Again.
Yeah.
Again,
Yeah.
And I know some folks have already maybe broken an ankle walking that trail, especially at night.
So, Judd, can you give us what's the legal issue here? Is it
Well,
just claiming?
I think Mr. Henry's correct. What I've said is that to clarify that ownership is in us, we request the adjacent property owners, those individuals or entities, businesses that own property along there, do a quick claim deed to us, clarifying that we have all ownership interests. Then we can spend money on it. And that way it's clear that we have a right to spend money to improve it because it's ours. And also takes care of the issue you were talking about, Commissioner, related to them not be able to come back later and claim or move over on there. And so the issue, so the reality is that the commission could approve that action, then we'd be able to spend money on it. I think Manager Williams has expressed a concern that he feels like there needs to be a policy because he's afraid that this is going to lead to other instances. That's why I guess we're here today.
Yeah.
Well, the policy leads to, we have this, I guess out of this group, I'd like to just see a policy that if the surrounding boundary owners by a certain percentage want to say that they don't own the property, then it's ours to own. And, or maybe it's 100% around there that need to say that they don't own. It's kind of like we do with our quick claims, Judd, when we offer a quick claim, not all the properties want to take advantage of the quick claims, but some do.
That's a good point.
So
the issue,
it's a reverse sort of process.
the issue is that, ACC Gov, if I go at Athens-Clarke County, Georgia, takes the position now that we don't have any interest in the alleys. So, if property owner comes forward, we get this a lot of times, property owner come forward, some property owners who own property on our alley will say, I want to close this alley and put, or maybe the alley was never officially open. There's lots of alleys. They say, well, I want to get tile this alley. Our response, before I got here, through Transportation Public Works, the right-of-way coordinator's response would be, Athens-Clarke County doesn't have any interest in that alley. So if you want to file a quiet tile action, we won't object, to the court saying y'all, this property owner, the adjoining property owners own the alley. And so, management's concern, I think, is this is a change from where we've always been with alleys. We've always taken position alleys, they're not ours. And I think there's some distinctions here, though. One is this is obviously a pedestrian thoroughfare, in my opinion. And so And it's certainly the commission's right if they want to take this on and be responsible, believe enough people are benefiting from it to do that. I've maintained that all along. I know staff, I'm not questioning staff, I'm just stating facts. Management's been concerned like that. We need a policy because he's afraid if we do one, we're gonna get all these other requests. And
Well,
I'm stating that
but
right.
you're exactly right.
I'm
But
just-
Jed, we get those requests all the time,
That-
whether it regards to
yeah.
sidewalks or whatever. And the thing the position I'm taking on this is this, that whenever a quitclaim comes before us, if a private property owner wants to get some property that we claim we don't own, it still has to come through the mayor commission. And this would still have to come through the mayor commission.
Oh, yeah.
Even, I mean, that's,
claim.
that to be all, that ought to be or if you want a policy, and just keep this topic brief,
Yeah.
the policy is, this is just the reverse. If all the property owners around there say they don't own it, and we want to take action on it, then we can, or if they are petitioning us to take action on it. And it's not unlike our sidewalk priority list or our bicycle priority list or our paving priority list. I mean, that's how that fits into play there.
I mean, I think one of our concerns is the maintenance question that you're opening up if you're going to do that for everybody that asks. And so,
Well, I'm not saying you can do it for everybody that asks. I'm saying that it needs to go through that process of a vote between the mayor and commission and determine what the maintenance issue is. But with this one, I guarantee you, if you look at the maintenance and look at the number of people that walk through there's this particular area is probably more utilized than 90% of our sidewalks in town. And we still maintain those sidewalks.
And to us, I'm hearing a bunch of criteria come out potentially of what we might look to, like safety, number of pedestrians, connected to 2 right-of-ways. So in theory, yeah, we're talking about one here, but we're really trying to talk about the process.
Josh, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I just don't want, this has been a 30-year problem, and I don't want it to drag on another 3 months. If you don't mind my impatience on this, because I think people are recognizing this, as being more heavily utilized. If we're asking people to walk and bike to places, and we have something like this to where they can't get through in a safe manner, then we need to do something about it.
So, but, okay. I get where staff is coming from, because it is important that we address 813. We got to figure out, overall policy for what we're going to do for all these alleyways. Do we take over? And I do like your idea of asking the percentage of owners and then we take over, but, we do need a simple policy for us to move forward, because it will be, I understand from a budget standpoint, it would be a nightmare for us to take over all of that.
Well, I don't know if it would be. I mean, because what could happen is you have a policy where you have district commissioners work with the adjoining property owners to take over that alleyway, and then from then it goes to staff where it comes to the mayor commission to vote on. Then it goes to staff to determine what level of maintenance and what level of repairs are needed in order to bring that up to standards. That then comes back to us for a vote. So all along you're coming back to us for a vote to fix something up. And at some, some alleyways, be honest with you, how many alleyways have you asked people to take over? Yes. This is the only alleyway in the 12, 14 years I've been in commission that somebody's asked us to help maintain. I'm sure there's some other ones in 5 Points that I can think of, but for right now, this is the only one that people have asked us to maintain.
And that would be my question. If we put this in the ordinance, can it be put in a sense where we will only take over if we're asked, or find out who's the ownership? I'm not sure how we wordsmith that, but if the owners want to own the alley, then it's their responsibility.
That's right.
Right.
But if they don't want to own it, then it would fall back on them. That's what the government. But again, so I'm not sure out of that 800 plus, how many of those that say owners may want it, or they may say, nah, hands off, you can give it to Athens-Clarke County.
Well,
That's what we don't know.
an easy way to do it is it like if somebody in your district says I'd like the county to start maintaining this particular alleyway. And then the policy is, okay, well, you need 100% of the property owners around there to agree to this. And that's a high number for them to come across. And if you get somebody saying 100%, because, you know, in some alleyways, somebody's gonna, and they lay out the options, well, if we take it over, that means you're not gonna have
Right.
control of it.
That's right.
And that's gonna make a lot of people wonder if they want to go that direction or not. But for this instance, they're okay with that. So,
Like downtown now, we got the alleyways downtown. Who's responsible for the downtown alleyways now? Is it, I know you said that downtown authority, they're paying to maintain that.
well, they do for some of them, but they don't own them.
Yeah.
We're just doing it as
Courtesy?
as a courtesy, but also, you know, the property owners downtown pay that extra mill and property tax. So we see it as a way to provide a service to them for doing that. And we,
So downtown then, we'll maintain. Is
So
that,
Steve, you want to?
So, and one of the differences about downtown, if you look at them, I don't think they would serve the same purpose because they don't have full connection between streets, right? So you couldn't-
there's one.
yeah, so you couldn't use them as pedestrian thoroughfares like you could have.
Maybe two. Yeah.
I think what you stated are basically the criteria I was thinking, that if you narrow your criteria to really pinpoint a few that stand out, like the one at 5 points, what you said was clear instance of no private ownership or the agreement from 100% of people to quit claim, right? That's the first thing that you have to get. Second is that it has the potential to serve a public good, that transportation corridor. And then there's demand for it, right? That we know that people are using this or want to use it because they've reached out. I think if you narrow it to that, you really have a lot less.
14 years right there.
Motion to approve.
Real quick though, and that's part of the charge, I would say, you know, and maybe that's part of the charge. The second half is unopened rights of way. I want to make sure that, you know, that covers both parts of the charge.
so could you do you have an unopened
Unopened?
pathway on this map so we can look at it right quick? You got one?
And as Bruce is looking that up, the one other thing you have to think about is how do you operationalize that, right? Which to me means how do you fund that? So first is figuring out how many, if you have that definition that we agree on, how many have you narrowed it to? And then figuring out on average, what does that cost to maintain and what does maintained look like?
Well, I would consider maintaining to look like our sidewalk. I mean, you know, I don't see this as any different than this,
So getting rid of-
or a
getting rid of-
multi-use path.
Getting rid of trip hazards and maybe either concrete or asphalt. We have to choose one of those.
Right.
And then maybe lighting, I mean, something that,
Yes,
it's different things to think about, but
right.
yeah.
If Commissioner Hammond is right, though, if we only had one over the past 14 years,
It might not be.
it may not be a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, I haven't had,
Yeah, it may not be a
I
lot.
mean, that could change now that we're talking about it,
Yeah.
but,
Can you go over the downtown situation one more time with sanitation, solid waste? What we mentioned, just give us a scenario where it may become an issue.
So if you think about Jackson Street,
Yeah.
there is an alley right here
Yeah.
off of Jackson Street that at one point in time, solid waste department was considering an opportunity here for some sort of shared collection to occur. And it didn't materialize. And I think part of the reason why it didn't materialize is when you look at this alley, there was so much going on in there that the fire marshal actually had some concern of us stockpiling anything in that alley. And it was at cross purposes with fire and emergency egress for downtown. So we failed to hit launch on that particular location. But as Commissioner Hammond rightfully correctly pointed out, there's only a couple of alleys that actually go through an entire block.
One has art on it, yeah.
And one is this one right here that has been used by the Downtown Development Authority to do some art installations. This is behind the Cotton Exchange building. And it's a great use of, and this gets a lot of activity, partially because we have a tenant who lives right here. That's their way in and out of their apartment. So, do they own it? No, they don't. Does Athens-Clarke County claim ownership of it? No, Athens-Clarke County does not. But it remains open, and there is that maintenance agreement and opportunity that's been arranged with Downtown Development Authority.
well, in the downtown development authority, he's also cleaned out there's a little alleyway. It's not connecting to anything, but it's in between two buildings next to gosh, what was the bar right across from the Ben Epps statue there?
Yeah, it goes through, yeah.
And it was just a big mess, but authority went in and cleaned it up and has been making sure it stays clean.
Yeah. So we've got these little schnibs around downtown, and they're kind of in dispute. I mean, we've just never really dealt with them, to be honest with you. And periodically we look at them as opportunities, and then we dig into it, and then they get sticky, for lack of a better way to put it.
And what I'm asking for is not worrying about the downtown stuff.
Yeah, categorically,
But yeah,
taking it off.
because you've got other partners that can help,
Then
also
outside of that.
also property owners that,
And
that,
I want to show that this is not just a 5 points issue. I think that's important because I think sometimes we get focused on some things and we think it's one neighborhood's issue, and in this case, it is not. So over by Athens Regional, by Piedmont, here's Georgia Avenue. If you're familiar with the area, there's a parking structure right here off of Pine Needle. There's an alley, a mapped but unimproved, as you were asking for, alley that exists right here. And it runs across the backyards of all these properties. And when you go out here, this is one I think that fits in that category of needs investigation. Because the way these lots sit, they tip towards that alley. So does it presently serve any obvious function with regard to water or sewer or pedestrian access or vehicles? No, it doesn't. But it might have a passive use in that it's collecting stormwater in a way that's protecting these properties from having any one property take the brunt
right.
of the situation.
And I don't know much about this one there, but I would wonder too, how much it gets, I mean, if it's unimproved, it's not getting used that much, and whether or not the property owners around there would want us to come in. And
So here's an example of an alley that was used for stormwater by Athens-Clarke County. So here's the plaza. And some years ago, we designed a regional facility that alleviated a big problem over here. And we did clear title on this piece. But you can see this. It's not going to pick it up. But this is the unclaimed ribbon of alley that goes again across the backs of all of these. And then there's this connection to the right of way. There's also this ribbon right here, also unimproved. So they exist in the parcel layer because they are lines of record for people's ownership, and it's a gap. What do these things offer for public purpose is yet to be determined. So that's why we tried to break up these categories.
so which category would the 5 points one that I referred to fall into?
I would say it's number 4.
I would say so, yeah.
Yeah.
And what I'm suggesting is, to keep it simple, let's just look at number 4. And
Yeah.
I'm not saying just to keep it simple, just because it satisfies what I'm trying to do, but when you do get into the unimproved ones, you do have to answer a lot of other questions. But
Yeah.
so then you lower that number down significantly.
Mhm.
You get rid of these first 3 categories and just focus on number 4, and you lower it down quite significantly.
Keep it simple. Yeah, number 4.
And I have a quick question. You may have said it and it may have went off my head, but for the pathways that are behind someone's houses, would we, because they are alleyways, would we take it upon ourselves to do anything to those? No, we would just leave them the way that they are.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm fine with it.
Yeah.
I didn't want to fight something.
I'll be honest, selfishly from a staff standpoint, what would be great is to have some sort of SOP, not a policy, but a procedure that we follow, that we all agree on, that when neighbors come to us and say, what's the process for getting this quitclaim to the back, that we have this uniform process that we all agree is the way that we're going to go. And over the years, it's kind of moved. We've had different interpretations of it, and it's all been thoroughly researched in the moment, but it's been different sometimes from instance to instance. That would be great as a secondary effort to try to clean that up. But we wanted to give you these categories just to kind of compartmentalize the issues. And it sounds like
Yeah.
number 4 is,
So
Simple.
can staff write up works method for what Commissioner Hamby said? And can staff create a policy for 1, 2, and 3?
I don't know that we need to direct staff to create a policy for 1, 2, 3 at this point in time. Let's just focus on 4 and then go from there. I mean, because the issues haven't arisen for 1, 2, and 3. I mean,
And that would be outside the charge too. I think 1, 2, and 3 probably wouldn't meet that goal
And
of
pedestrian,
used for biking pedestrian. use.
Yeah.
we're done.
So we'd focus on 4, write up a policy that's based on those merit criteria that you already, I've reverberated it for years. It's demand, potential to serve the public good, and clearly an instance of no private ownership or the agreement of 100% of the people to quit claim.
Do y'all like 100%? You
I
think?
think does it have to be?
You have to
I
be.
think it has to be because when we do a quick claim, I think it has to, doesn't it?
Unless you plan on going to court condemnation.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, when somebody wants us to give them the property or say we don't own it, I think it has to be 100%.
It should be 100% out of fairness.
Yeah, it should. I agree.
Okay.
I'm fine with that. I know, in that instance, 100%, I agree.
All right.
I think a question for staff would be, maintenance expectations and wanting to make sure we have conversations about what are potential costs that would come with this. And I think to Stephen's point earlier, what y'all want to do once it is approved and what you want it to look like. We're seeing this with neighborhood traffic calming, not having enough funds for what we're getting asked to do. Obviously, if we were able to have a conversation about maintenance and costs, and maybe Wayne wants to speak a little bit to this, then in the budget, if this is approved, potentially you'll create an account. But that's something we want to think about too. We don't want to set expectations that we can't deliver on if we don't have any funding, if we haven't had that conversation.
Is that fair to bring back next time? Like, so if we can reduce that 815 down to something much narrower because of this new definition, we'd have a better idea of how big they are,
Yeah.
and we could start assigning costs to them.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Well, I know you've already done the 5 points one. So
Yeah, I think we've got a list of that. Do you remember, Wayne?
Off the top of my head.
Had tree removal and then repaving
I think it
asphalt.
was like 200,000 or 300,000 or something. It was.
I don't think it's that much.
Was that much?
Wasn't like that.
See, I told you before.
But if we can bring back both those.
Yeah, I'd be
No, it
right.
wasn't.
Oh, yeah, yeah,
It wasn't that much.
yeah, that's a lot of money, Mike.
No, it wasn't that much.
Okay. Wow.
And just for transparency, figuring out we know that there's a few of these. 5 points is an easy one to identify. Finding the rest of them and narrowing down that might take a while. Do some field research.
Well,
So
here's the thing I'm suggesting there, Stephen, is I don't know that staff needs to do that because it depends on the county commissioner.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, you only do it if there's an issue that arises and where we need to
Yeah.
where we need to vote on it.
But I
So,
think Thornton has behind the.
well, those may be unimproved right of ways.
do you
I'm
want
not
to
saying-
ask the commissioners if there's any there that they know of that we could at least start looking? I mean, 5 points is easy one to start with, and y'all, I'm sure, could find the funding for it. But
Right.
if there's other ones that are already known, that's helpful to know if there's.
But I think everybody needs to know the difference between an unimproved right of way and an improved.
Yes.
Sort of, and how often it gets traveled.
Right.
But the policy will help with that. And I think that's why we want to root to a policy so
Yeah.
we can define and give everybody proper expectations.
Well, I just think too, as it goes through the process, even if you have the policy, I mean, there's plenty of policies we have out there that don't necessarily, that don't see the light of day for funding or whatever reason. But if we have a policy that people know they can point to, and then you work to get the approval through the commission on whether or not we accept the quitclaim on this. The second step is to work to see if there's funding available for that. So, and work with the commission on that. So you don't need to, I'm not suggesting you put a bucket of money into something.
Policy is not a promise.
Yeah, the policy is not a promise.
Is a
No,
chance to talk.
exactly.
Yeah.
It's a
That's what
sifting
I'm
out.
saying. Thank you, Bruce.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's what I'm suggesting there, Josh, without having to go through the whole bureaucratic steps.
So, motion to approve the first step, was to create the policy, and that we'll vote on that in March, right?
February, I hope, or
What's the
So
time?
you're talking about it comes back to this committee?
Typically,
I
what
thought
we
we're-
do is we draft it, we'll send it to y'all in advance of the next meeting, and then you'd have that to give your feedback at the next GOC.
Okay.
And we could share some other information too then, and then you'd have that draft to.
Well, I guess I would say this, Chair, if you don't mind. I've seen this in the past where the committees get bogged down into writing the ordinance. And I just think we
Yeah.
need to give guidance on what needs to be in the
Yeah.
policy or the ordinance and not
And I have-
address the ordinance because it comes back to us. Because it'll come back to us as a full body. I mean, it may
Yeah.
take two steps for us to direct the attorney to write the ordinance and then we approve the ordinance. You see where I'm going?
Mhm.
So I think this body just needs to approve what policy goes in the ordinance, and Judd writes the ordinance, and then go from there, but get bogged down on doing this.
I mean, I think the question would be for staff, how much time we need to put this on paper and then bring it back.
It seemed pretty
If we
simple and
have some
straightforward.
questions, if there's any other information we need.
It's pretty straightforward as far as the criteria. It's,
Could y'all have something by February, y'all need to wait tomorrow?
no, I think February's.
I think having the criteria and then knowing what that net that we've created is gonna catch, right? So have the criteria, make that a query so that we know how many things are gonna meet that criteria right off the top from the best available knowledge, knowing that the focus is this one.
Well, knowing that the
But-
focus is, whatever which one it is, that the criteria then has to go through the mayor and commission
The
and,
triggers bring it to y'all,
right.
yes. But I just, order of magnitude makes sense for us to at least represent what this policy
Yeah.
might capture.
So let's bring this back in, at our meeting in February after staff. And then we'll take it up from there.
Bring it back to committee.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
So that'd be the third Wednesday of.
February. Monday.
Sure. Have it to you the week prior? for
Yes.
Review?
With the, with the new number, it's up 813.
I'll hope to have a new number for you.
Yeah,
It'll at least be lower than 830.
there we go.
Motion to, we need a motion or? Motion to adjourn.
I thought we had one other item, right?
Okay.
Well, maybe I looked at it, I thought,
That wouldn't have, we have one to the right.
those are notes, okay, I'm sorry. 'Cause you just had B, okay. I thought that was another item, my bad,
No,
Okay.
we just have a couple waiting on the wings, that's all.
okay.
So this should be wrapped up, probably take about 20, 30 minutes at our next meeting. We should recommend at our next meeting as well to talk about Peace Corps. So be prepared for that at our next meeting. I call it PSCOB, but they call it Peace Corps, the Public Safety
Civilian oversight.
Oversight Board. So
And I would take a.
it won't take too long.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm on that committee,
Yeah.
and Williams, you on the committee? Oh, Williams,
Thank you, Jim.
Motion to adjourn.
You take into account I got a lot of kids. You put me on to.
All in favor, say aye.
I
All right, thank y'all. Short and sweet.
So,
um,
thanks, Todd.
thank you.
said that.